So I see Madeline first. Why don't you just say hello and introduce yourself, then I'll go to Christy.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Madeline Desjardins. I am the Senior Director of Internal Communications and Employee Engagement at WalkMe. And we are a tech company based in Israel and recently bought by SAP. So we're going through a major merger. It's been lots of fun and lots of great work. I really focus on global communications, employee engagement, and organizational culture building. I'm really dedicated to driving impactful, positive change within orgs and ensuring employees feel informed, connected, and valued.
Amazing. Christy.
Hi, folks. I'm Christi Gilhoi. I actually work in mergers and acquisitions. So I'm on the other side, Madeline, of acquiring companies. And when we do that, we want to make sure people have a smooth transition to Cisco and the new company and the new culture. So really invested in employee experience. Lots of experience in the past with employee recognition at Okta and Qualcomm. So I care deeply about this space and the human to human connection, especially as we move into this world of AI and technology. That human to human piece is going to be so much more important.
Wonderful. And now I'm going to pass it over to Ryan.
Hey, so I'm Ryan Costello. I'm the Organizational Development Program Manager here at the Wayne County Airport Authority. We house both DTW, which is Detroit Metropolitan Airport, and Willow Run Airport. So what we do in org dev here is it's my goal to kind of grow the company in culture and the way we do with our employees, and also, of course, employee development. So that's our day to day. And yeah, that's kind of the short and quick about me there.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for your time. And just to kind of set the stage here, the a few months ago, I was actually having a lunch in one of those fun events where you sit down and kind of like speed date, but it's like with corporate folks and you talk about business and all that fun stuff. And we kept talking about the same thing, which is that all of us, right? We're all in this space where we have this intention of doing something that means really something to someone else. And it usually has some sort of reflection of, I see you, I hear you, you do a great job, and how do you do that in a way that is scalable? How do you do it in a way that doesn't feel like the same thing everybody else gets, and how do you do it in a way that feels like, okay, like, wow, I really like working here. And I really feel like they know who I am. And so we're going to talk about how to get that going, right? So I'm going to start off with a question for Christy, which is, what actually makes a recognition moment, just like I was talking about right there, like feel intentional, right? Instead of this like automatic feeling.
I think authenticity is a really important part of that. Personalization. We live in this highly personalized world, right? In our social media world, in our shopping world. And so when I get recognized, I want my boss or my VP to do it in a way that calls me out and really sees me. So, did you see what I did? Why is it important to the company? How does it make my boss feel? I think that's a part we miss often is the emotional piece. I love it when my boss said, hey, you nailed that presentation. It's going to be great for our mergers and acquisitions, but it made me feel so proud to be part of a team with you. So that feeling piece, that emotive piece, makes all the difference in the world. So I think as we talk about recognition, we have to move beyond that quick thank you or great job to, I see what you did. Here's why it's important to me. Here's how it made me feel. And here's how it connects to the larger mission that we're trying to drive together.
Excellent. Madeline, go for it.
Yeah, and I think intention is such an important part of building any culture, especially a global one. When we look at how intention creates impact, it doesn't always, right? Your intention can be different from your impact. So you really have to think about how to make meaning for all your diverse employees, especially when you're looking at international strategies. And for me, that all kind of comes down to shared corporate values. So I think that's a great way to access recognition. Scaling intention globally starts with clarity and care. And so it's not a one size fits all, as Christy just said. It's really deeply personal. So when you're working across these regions, time zones, rather than trying to just standardize what it looks like, try to standardize the why. Why are you doing this? What is important about it? Exactly, the questions Christy is asking. And also get a little global. We like this concept of both global and local. It's a little silly, but it's fun. And so how can you use this shared global meaning, this global culture, like we call it being part of Team Walk Me, but then also look for cultural nuance and know that, everyone's part of Team Walk Me, but what it looks like on the ground in Tel Aviv in Israel is going to be different than London, is going to be different than Raleigh. So we have a really dynamic business with one shared identity, but looking for those cultural nuance and something with that too is really highlighting a storytelling. I think pointing out where those stories can take that intention into meaning. We have a global newsletter that highlights everything across the globe. So you have those little cultural moments, but you also have this bigger what it looks like to be a Walk Me team member. And that's a great way to align all of us together and share those stories because you're not in the offices together, you're not seeing it. So that storytelling is huge. And to Christy's point, like bringing it into this really direct, I saw you do X, it showed Y, and here's the impact. That builds meaning. And that is such a simple thing that you can take any location, anywhere, globally or locally, and really show the impact and make sure you're demonstrating the why.
Oh, I love that. Before I jump, I'm going to follow up with you on that one. Before I do, though, to the anonymous person, congratulations. You won webinar bingo. You have asked whether or not this will be recorded, and the answer is yes. Yes, it is being recorded, and yes, you will get a copy. And yes, we will send you a follow-up with all of that wonderful information, including key takeaways and all the fun stuff. Ding, ding, ding. Congratulations to you. Madeline, so you kind of started to touch on this with when you're talking about all these different diverse cultures within the organization, especially as you go global, right? It gets kind of interesting. Now, from what you're saying, like I totally get that perspective. How does that translate to a board or a CEO? Like, what do you need to do, at least from your own experiences of getting buy-in from that leadership level, to get them to also say, yeah, I'm 100% in on this.
Yeah, it's so important because it's about that moment to moment interaction and being real and being authentic. But then you also have to convince people to put money into it, right? That you can actually invest and create a bigger structure. And you don't always need money. You can do plenty, no budget things, but you can really make a bigger impact if you're getting that ELT buy-in and your execs are on board. There is so much research about the impact of recognition and employee engagement on business outcomes that I highly, highly, highly recommend building a full deck for your ELT. If you haven't done it, even if you're in the middle of your program, like highlight it, bring it back to them and make sure that they know why this is important and what you're doing. And so it's either what you're doing now or what you want to do. And if you can build that out and really pitch it like it's a brand new product that you're selling to your leaders, and make it real. So it's not just conceptual, it's impacting day-to-day life. Your executive team should naturally want to be really proud of their work and want your employees to be proud of the work that they're doing. That is company culture, right? Everybody's going to work harder to give discretionary effort if you're all leaning in and feeling recognized. So you want the research, but I would also pull out real life examples. So who is a person that is super engaged in your business that you can kind of use as an example, who is participating in your current programs or would be excited about the new program, and show, what impact are they making on the business? How does their effort come through? Where are they, the people that are getting recognized? Tie it to business impact at your company today. So it's not just these numbers, it's something that's actively real for your executives. And then they can really see, okay, well, yeah, I love everybody to be a Dan. Dan is doing amazing work. So how can we do that? Well, Dan's doing amazing work because you're recognizing Dan and he's getting these things, and let's hear from Dan. And so it's a great way to just really make it real. And then finally, the last thing I want to say on that is it's just really important that your execs are really like walking the talk, if you will, because that will be the killer of your great program. If your executive goes up and they are, yeah, we have these values, they're cool, we have this recognition, it's fine, and you can tell their heart's not in it, they don't really care, they don't really understand, it's going to fall flat. So it's really, really important that they get it, and it might take different approaches in different ways. It's not just your traditional deck, but really showing them and helping them feel part of it. And then using those cultural markers when your CEO is talking about recognition or talking about values, it matters. People are watching, people are seeing that they are actively living the values and making them part of day to day. So really, again, coming back to that intentionality and that meaning, how can you encourage your leaders not just to kind of understand it, but to live it and lead it from their own way?
Wonderful. Ryan, love to get your insight on this part.
Yeah, so you talk about research and kind of selling it to the board or to the executives. And one of the benefits we have here is I get the opportunity to kind of have a whole lot of data points. I love having data and kind of be able to give, hard, concrete evidence, which is great. And one of the things we use is one of our surveys every year. And one of the things we kind of measure is pride and pride with the company and the organization and how things relate to how people feel. And one of those things, well, we kind of a theory, right? If you feel good, you work good, and feeling good comes with from recognition and having a pride of what you do for a living. We're all at work more than we're ever home anymore. It's kind of how it works. It's kind of the sad point and sad truth now. So we don't have pride in our work. It's kind of a terrible thing. So we wanted to engage and measure that. And one of the things we did was actually put it in our survey directly. We asked very pointed, directed questions. And what we could do then is we could take it and we actually take it to the board and to our CEO and C-suite staff and VPs, and we can actually show that the data supports that people that are appreciated and feel a sense of pride at work, do better. We can correlate this to different departments and work orders and how things are handled. Overall morale for the team goes up when we really focus on it. And another great thing we can do with the data points is we can, see where we're successful and where we're struggling. So when we see a struggle point, we know, hey, it's time to invest and kind of look at those points. What's going on? Why are we taking a downturn? And kind of talk to those leaders in those departments and kind of get their intel on it and trying to figure out what's going to turn this around. Why are we going to keep moving forward as the organization and specifically in those departments. So, I mean,
I
yeah,
love, yeah.
that's really it. Yeah.
I love that, Ryan. I know that we've done a lot with surveys before we have a program in place and then after, and it moves the needle every time. So that's a key point. I do think that leaders need to feel it though. And so I've talked a lot about recognizing up. And one of the stories from one of our CEOs is he was giving a presentation once and he didn't realize this, but people were recognizing him on the platform. And he didn't look into it right away, but it was like 2 months later when he realized he must have just gone in and he saw that people were saying, hey, you handled that difficult topic with such grace. Hey, we feel heard. Hey, we feel like the company is responsive. And when the CEO saw that, he started responding back on the platform. And we didn't even know it was happening, but it was just showing you that it doesn't need to just happen from the manager to the employee or from the SVP to the frontline folks. You can recognize up all the way to the CEO because everyone wants to know, how am I doing? Is this landing? What do people think? So that's just another fun story. And that happened after the data, after we got the budget. And that it wasn't until that point when he was in there doing the thing as a recipient where I think it really landed with him emotionally.
And we have a great question from the Q&A already about an organization having a hard time keeping leaders and supervisors accountable. And I know this is something that we'll kind of talk about throughout. But I mean, at WalkMe, we call our system WorkProud. So you're going to hear me do that a few times. We named it internally and came up with that. At WalkMe, we actually have part of our people leader goal is they have a piece on recognition. And so their goal for the year is tied to that and therefore their pay and everything else. So we have like hard ties to it, but also, some of it's getting nitty gritty, getting into workshops, really helping train your leaders on it doesn't have to be hard. What can you pre-schedule? What can you do in the moment? How can you embed it into your day to day? But there's a weird curve, right? Where people kind of get it, to Christy's point, where like you're like, oh, it's another task, and then somehow it becomes real for you and you start doing it. And so you have to figure out a way to help it click for your leaders. And that's not an easy task. And so sometimes it's a bigger campaign, sometimes it's one-on-one. How can you work with HR to really get in there and work with them on motivating their employees, not just recognition? I'm sure you guys have other great ideas too. So please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I love this question, and I would love to just dive a little bit deeper because I love it. First of all, thank you for asking a question. Everybody that's on here, it looks like we have a nice group of people that are showing up so far. Please do feel free to ask questions here. Like this is a panel for a reason, right? So, okay, great, Ryan. So it seems like we're talking a little bit about the technology side of this too. So, and I think there's like a nice convergence between what we were just talking about in terms of getting leadership buy-in, but then also understanding how do you manage or navigate the dependency or need for great technology to keep things running, have that automation in play, but then also make sure that human element is there too. So I'd love to get your feedback on that, and then maybe we can keep that part of the conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. So tech is huge. Obviously, everything we do now it revolves around technology. One of the biggest things we found is everybody wants it now. It's got to be quick. It's got to be on point. It's got to be, right in your face. There's no delaying to, the next company meeting to get information out or anything like that. We need to do it fast. So one thing we did is actually work with, your guys, WorkProud, and we created our platform and we call it props, which is positive rewards for outstanding performance and service. Obviously, we took the play on the airplanes there, but so what we use it for is an online kind of platform for really anything to recognize employees that what they're doing. One of the great things we did with it is, you can use it for peer-to-peer recognition. You can use it for service anniversaries. We use it for welcoming teammates to the team. We have something called Props News, which is just big things going on inside the organization. So to really make it, to make it meaningful for everyone and to kind of keep it personalized, is anything that goes out automated, there really is nothing. Somebody has to have a touch point on it. So what that means is when we do peer-to-peer recognition, we can't just go in and click a button and say good job and it auto tabulates. We want people to generally have an idea of sending something honest to employees and to each other. So when we create messages and do these, it's social platform, I guess you can call it internally. We really kind of coach each other on how to give those appreciations, at least from a leadership standpoint. For our leaderships and everyone, we kind of involve the tech. We really push it here as a quick way to not wait giving feedback to employees. It's a quick, fast. We can do it from our phones out in the field, anything like that. So it's just a great way. And another thing we did was to kind of add on to it to make it seem, I should say seem to let people know we care is we tied a monetary value to it a little bit. We call it props points. And one thing we did with that was allow peer to peer. Sorry, we're going through apparently a test.
Well, glad everything's okay. While that's happening, we'll jump back to you, Ryan, in a second. Maybe Christy, if you want to do a follow-up there on that too.
Sure. I think it's about having multiple channels. Like the technology is one tool, but I just a couple of quick stories. This morning, I actually went to the fridge and I have a thank you note that a previous boss sent to me, and it's still on my fridge. It's been like a year, right? So that's just a different modality. So it's like thinking about all the comprehensive channels. When I was trying to pitch recognition programs to baby boomers, they were really nervous about us sending silly gifts. Like they couldn't even handle that. Our millennial folks just picked up on that and loved it, and it was really fun. But then when I talked to my 22-year-old daughter, who's Gen Z, she says, there's parts of social media that I like, Mom, but I would really value a voice memo or a video memo from an employer. I want to feel that really personal thank you from someone because that's the currency for me. So I think it's thinking not just about sort of one tech solution, but thinking about even walking around and handing someone a thank you. I think it's about all the different ways that we can recognize and build a culture of recognition. And then the technology becomes an enabler and a tool or a way to do that from San Diego to Tel Aviv or San Diego to Frankfurt. And I think if you have both firing at once, that's really the magic combination.
Oh, I love that. And that actually brings up a question I want to ask everybody. But first, I want Ryan to give Ryan, I see you looking out, but your microphone's doing a great job of canceling it out. But I know it's like asking someone to talk while there's a fire alarm going off. It's impossible to actually think straight. So I'll ask Madeline if she wants anything she wants to feed there before we give Ryan the floor to solve it.
No, I think I just agree that, recognition is so diverse. It's really about an opportunity. And so, how can you take that opportunity and whether it's formal or informal, and really make it personal, make it authentic, and then you can build structures that can do that for you. Like, if you have a rewards program that can let you redeem points for anything, then you already have all of this variety. It's built in. You don't have to be like, okay, well, so and so wants the gift, and so wants money, and so want, like how can you hit that through a system that also makes it very personalized. And I think technology can really help in that way. So it's where AI doesn't have to be our foe, it can be our friend and just make it a lot easier while still keeping that really human, really personal touch at the center and the motivation and the intention.
Love that. Ryan, any chance?
We might be safe for a moment, making no promises. I thought we were good, and then all of a sudden you started talking and it started going off again. I'm like, oh, here we go. I mean, it's just gonna be one of those days. I don't know. So I missed some of the conversation. But like you guys said, I think, a huge part of it is not losing touch of the personal touch of it. Whether we use the AI platform or use our technology, there is still something to be said about, getting with someone, even if you made a post or even if you did something online, going up to that person and shooting that personal message with them is still just a huge thing. And it can really brighten up and lift somebody's, day, week, month, or, even the whole year, to quote Friends there. But aging myself just a touch. But yeah, I think it's a huge part of everything. We gotta work with technology and let it work for us and really use it to our advantage.
And I actually want to dovetail off of that. We have a great question in the Q&A about like how to keep recognition fair and unbiased, which of course humans are doing it. There's no perfect way to do that. That said, if you're building a culture that is really intentional and really thoughtful about recognition, if recognition is happening everywhere, it should be pretty easy to kind of see where the gaps are and see if there are people that are not receiving recognition or participating. Are they not recognizing people? That's another great indicator. And then I'll also say with the technology piece that we've been talking about, technology can help. So something like if you have a system, if you have something like WorkProud, you can go in and kind of with that look and see which team members have never been recognized, which team members are not doing recognition, and be able to kind of spot check that to then go to their teams and their leaders and have a conversation. So it's not easy. Reducing bias rarely is. But if you're really intentional about it, I think I will also say we haven't had a lot of problems with that. That was something that when we started doing a big robust global recognition platform, I was concerned. Our people, we also give all of our team members points to give away. I think that's the best way to do it if you can, because everyone's invested, everyone's rewarding each other as well as recognizing. So powerful. But we're like, well, what if the same person gives their friend their 10 points every month? And then, we're just creating this terrible thing. I have not seen that happen in the year and a half that we have been live with our program. And that was what I was told at the beginning. So you're like, okay, we'll keep an eye on it. So I think it is something to be aware of, but it's not as big of an issue from what I've seen as it could be. So just keep it in mind. And if you do have data, again, coming back to that data, it's a great way to kind of have checks and balances so that it's not just, Christi is recognizing Madeline all the time, as fabulous as I may be.
Yeah, and I'll just add another piece on that. I think when you have questions about, are people getting recognized equally? Are there people who aren't getting recognized? That for me signals that you have a culture of scarcity with recognition. If you move to a culture of abundance with recognition, no one has ever been, I'm done. I'm tired of being recognized for my good work. And the science shows that you need to hear it once a week. And once a week seems like a lot. And that doesn't mean you need to go through a performance review once a week, but once a week you need to know, hey, Christi, yeah, what you're doing, you're on the right path. The way that you're moving through your work cycle is great. The way you're connecting with your team is great. And I so appreciate it. It makes me feel excited about this project. It's a 5-second action, but if you have a team of 5 people, that means you're doing it every day. And if you do have those people who aren't getting recognized, that's a frontline manager issue from my perspective. It could be an enablement issue. And then back to the accountability question, I like to use positive peer pressure and put leaderboards up and say, here are the departments that are doing recognition well. P.S. Here are their ENPS scores, much higher. Here are their attrition scores, much lower. Here are their satisfaction scores, much higher. And in the change management field, it's like that's when you start to feel the change curve and you start to get the adoption from those the sort of grouchy sideliners. You can't start with them. You have to pick them up at the end. But if they see that their peers are doing this, then you can bring them along. But you've got to start with, I think someone, Madeline said, the champions. You got to start with the people who are true believers and then pick up the naysayers later, maybe after a while.
I love that. Oh, and I love like the the competition within pot, like doing good things for people. I mean, that's such an exciting idea. Christy, actually, something you said a little earlier too was like around how different generations have different expectations of what works for them. And I think I would love in the chat if people that are listening in, I honest question, like, what is your favorite type of reward? I would love to just understand like some either a share an experience, share something that was really like surprising, etc. I mean, gosh, we were on a call, a different panel a few months ago where someone just really likes Diet Coke. And getting a Diet Coke was like the nicest thing they've ever received in their life because it had so much more meaning to them, because they knew that. It just shows, hey, I know you're a Diet Coke fan. Here you go. This is not sponsored by Diet Coke, just so you know. But it's just such a fun, like, little experiment that I thought that was really cool. And so I think it plays really well. Madeline, I want to ask you, when like a milestone helps represent a healthy culture. So that's kind of, and I think that's kind of a good segue. It's like the idea there is how we talked a little bit about the technology and the importance of the authenticity, the importance of buy-in, but it's okay, well, we still need, when you're dealing with tens of thousands of people, there has to be some sort of automation. There has to be some sort of systematization to it in order to do it, right? And then because of that, you're then allowed to be that person. So, but how do you do it in a way that kind of like emulates who you are as an organization and then make sure it doesn't feel like, oh, Madeline must have gotten her notification. So Madeline, would love for you to kind of lead that part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think this is like kind of two-pronged. There's one that's like the technology aspect of if you can automate it, and then make it personal on top of that. It's about easier when the automated thing comes up and then everyone can comment on it versus like having to think to create it in the first place. It's a great tool. Use it. But Christy said something about like recognition being a habit and being, I love thinking of it as like a muscle, right? Like you have to go to the gym to work out your human muscles. So like, what about your empathy muscle? What about your recognition muscle? A lot of leaders might not be building those muscles. And so how do you create the gym, if you will? How do you create opportunities for them to do little reps, little things, whether it's liking someone's birthday post and saying, hey, happy birthday, hope you had a great one. Takes a second, but it matters and somebody will see it. And especially for leaders that are really visible, it can make a huge impact. And then milestones in particular are so interesting because, when I first got into this many years ago, I was like, okay, well, we're going to do service anniversaries, we're going to do the milestones. And like the longer we're in it, like they just aren't the key factor in recognition anymore. It used to be you got your pen on the 5th anniversary and you got your watch on the 20th or whatever, right? I used to work for the Walt Disney Company and they have little statues and people still care about the statues. Don't get me wrong, because they're like 20 years and stuff. People are there for a long time. But it's not about that, right? People, even now, I have friends that are like, here's my Simba statue, it's here. It's not about the milestone of just being there. It's about the milestone of what you've accomplished and who you are, not just your physical presence, right? So like I mentioned earlier, that recognition is really based on opportunities. So if you look at a milestone as an opportunity, it can be formal, it can be informal, it can be automated, it can be in person. The point, as we've kind of been saying the whole time, is that it's about being personal and being authentic. So, how can you make a milestone, whether it's a service anniversary or a promotion or someone bringing home a new puppy? Like, how can a milestone be something fun and, do a little thing with your team about it? Or, let's celebrate the new puppy. Like, you can make anything into a milestone. It doesn't just have to be service awards or birthdays or kind of the more typical stuff. So I think, not every moment needs fireworks, and just make it individual. And the last thing I'll say on that is, you don't have to do it for someone. You can do it with someone. So you can also co-create. If someone has a milestone coming up, they're getting married, they have a big service anniversary, it's not all on you as the leader or you as the, main recognizer on the team to figure it out. You can work with your whole team and say, hey, we want to surprise Ryan. He's doing this big thing. Let's go and celebrate him. It can be a Zoom background, it can be a video, it can be anything. Or I can go talk to Ryan and say, hey, what do you want to do? You're getting married. How do you want to celebrate within the team and actually co-create that together? There is no official playbook. You really get to do this how you want. And so let go of whatever the traditional milestone thing is. And then I know we got a question in advance actually about 2-year milestones. And so while we're on milestones, I wanted to hit that really quickly too, because the 2-year is often a more important milestone than the 1 year because that's where we tend to see attrition. And so we got a question about like, what do you do? So I'm going to open that up to the group in case anyone has any fun ideas. But for WalkMe, I'll say we give the same at 2 years as we do at like 4 or 5. We actually start investing in you really early because we know it's a drop-off point and we know it's a place where that is a milestone that we've made more important because we know it's important.
You read my mind. I was thinking, remember, your milestones are not your employees' milestones. And
Yes.
we do have this older thinking about that. So maybe the milestones are 3 months. If you're a new grad, 3 months is a long time in a new job. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe you see your attrition at 18 months. And P.S., service time and seat has no necessarily, it does not correlate with performance. So I would say lean into the performance piece and recognize good performance and think about recognition pieces that are maybe not as traditional. Maybe it's a skip level with your VP at 3 months or 6 months to understand how you fit in. Maybe it's like this week I got to attend Cisco Live, this big conference. For me, that's recognition. Like that's what I value more than shout outs or accolades. Like it's opportunities to be part of something bigger. We at Cisco, we give birthdays. We give you a day off for your birthday. That feels really personal and considered. So your milestones, yeah, that milestone service anniversary, that's where a lot of companies start, but I would connect it to what you're trying to incentivize. And if you aren't having people stay for 5 years, you're burning a lot of time and energy on a 5-year award when really what you should be doing is recognizing those people as soon as they're in orientation.
And even off of Christi's point there, recognition can be, hey, you just hit 10 years. Here's a big story about Christi. How amazing is she? These are all the things she accomplished. That can be so much more valuable than an item because everyone is then celebrating you for your service and your accomplishments, not just being there.
Oh, I love that. I have to jump in real quick with one because I want to keep this part of the conversation going. Is in a previous panel we did, someone asked here about like the kind of the, well, not the playbook necessarily, but it's sort of like, how do you get this to really become ingrained in the culture? And we had a really good panel a few months ago talking about your day one, like, and actually day zero. So even before day one, what is the plan to get that person to feel like, whoa, I mean, I'm excited that I have a job, but this is different. This is something else that I wasn't expecting. I feel like I'm already communicating with these people and I'm not even on the payroll yet, and there's, you can try to segment it down into like different time periods. Like I know the we talked about the panel was like this 30 day period of like measurement and trying to like make sure that things are going well. And then you do that like year one review to kind of see how it went. But for me, from what I heard from that panel, and I'd love to get your perspective, is if you start with that experience, and then you can start to actually include others as well, because there's going to be FOMO, right? That's where you start to see some really, really cool experiences from people. And it's like, it's less about the tactics, and it's more about these people are putting a lot of effort and investment and just making me happy, That's really cool. And that's where it starts to tie into the next question, which is about this question that I'm seeing here about that really getting that leadership buy-in. And I want Ryan to kind of talk about this because I've yet met a single leader that doesn't have an ear perk up when you start talking about ROI, when you start talking about churn rates, when you start talking about, are we making money? Is the pipeline getting filled, etc.? And this is the stuff that I feel like doesn't get talked enough about. Everything that these fine folks are talking about, it has a massive impact on that. So Brian, I will open the elephant in the room and drop it on your lap and say, what are your thoughts on everything that just got shared there?
So as for, getting leadership's buy-in, as you want to call it, and kind of making the sales pitch for recognition, you really got to hit those points of what's it going to get them in the end, right? That return on investment. And that's really, what they're looking for. Why are we doing this program? Why are we spending X amount of dollars on this recognition program? For what? What are we going to get to her in the end? So that's one of the things we have to kind of sell every year, right? And realistically, it comes down to performance, productivity, and realistically operational and operational effectiveness, I guess you can call it. To kind of run those down, I mean, just look at improved retention rates. When people feel welcome and happy at their job, they're going to stay there longer. That's going to cut down on your turnover expenses, your cost for onboarding and setting out your new what's the word, I'm drawing a blank here, but applicants, you're going on for applying, anything like that, it's going to take time and money. So they're going to save money there through retention. You're going to get increased in our effort, which is a higher output of your employees when they feel appreciated. They're going to give that little bit extra, and that kind of relates down to, you're not going to have to increase your head count or your work hours, less overtime because people are doing it in the first place. They're going to give you that, let's face it, nobody ever gives truly 100%. So let's go, that 95% instead of the 80% for the day. And then, so you're getting a little bit more out of them simply because they're feeling better about what they're doing and where they're doing it. Overall, you're going to get one heck of a better team culture out of it, out of giving recognition to your employees. A happy culture is a good culture. It makes everybody communicate. It gives you teamwork. More cohesion in your team just leads to a much better product, way faster. Less errors, anything like that. And so that's going to be a huge benefit to your leadership teams. So really, it's kind of it's not a soft cost. There is, some into it, but the return on investment's just way bigger in the end, than not, kind of, I guess you could say buying into the program of, telling people they're appreciated and letting them know, how it works and what the benefit of that is. So.
Yeah, just to build on that, Ryan, too, I think it can't just be an HR thing, right? If it comes off as an HR program, it's going to be really hard to get that buy-in. So we looked at the engagement survey, back to your point, Ryan, and we saw who are the leaders who already do this well before we had a program, right? Who are the leaders that have the highest, I'd recommend my leaders to others. I want to stay in this job. I feel really satisfied. And then I went to those leaders and said, you folks are really good at recognition. Do you want to talk about this as in a panel to your peers? So recognizing the executives who are already good at this, the SVP of sales and engineering, the SVP of a really new hot product, if they actually understand and see that they're good at recognition, they can talk to their peers and it doesn't become an HR thing. Also, it can't be an HR budget thing. HR can set up a platform or a recognition program and maybe seed it a little bit. I always think of it like poker game. They can put up the ante, but you really need to have the budgets of the major business units invested, but you can't get that until you have proof of concept. So it's this idea of stand something up that's something that can be scalable, something that's really exciting, something that's working for your employees, then go back to the table and see if you can get the business units to add additional funding. But don't get stuck on that. You can do so much with non-monetary recognition. Like I said, skip level meetings, sending someone a gift, saying thank you, giving them a card. It doesn't have to be monetized. That's like a supercharger or a gamification or a fun piece. But once you have the data on recognition equals increased retention, recognition equals increased satisfaction, then you have a business case to go back to the table to your CFO and talk about maybe funding some additional initiatives.
Yeah, and to play on that, the way we introduce it, just to say, we don't have to do a monetary value to it. For the first year or year and a half, whatever it happened to be that we started the Props program, there was no points. It was just kind of a thank you platform. And just seeing that, we saw our survey numbers go up right from there, from employee engagement and happiness, and even realistically work numbers overall. We won a few awards and this, that, and the other, just because we were doing things better. People were going a little bit extra mile. And that was just from phase one. And that was just the simple introduction of being able to say thank you to each other and, having leadership say thank you. So then, like you said, a supercharger was when we added what we call phase two, into the program, which is when we started, really kind of giving managers points and leadership points to go out and award their teams. We wanted them to go out and look for them guys doing the right things. We wanted to, stop having such a negative connotation of when we're out on the field, looking at job sites, the negative. Hey, they're out here to get us in trouble. They're out here to just, so we can go out there, we can send our managers out and say, hey, go look for something doing right. Go do something they're doing correctly this time. And then we come back and they can kind of push those awards or, the recognition plus the award on top of the points. Oh man, it sold a whole different ball game, right? And then when we entered peer-to-peer points, what we call phase three, that's when it went haywire. I shouldn't say haywire. That's a kind of a negative term. It just went off the rails, right? There was so much activity on the site of people just saying thank you to each other, and it's all those little things that you would never notice otherwise. Just the quick fill-ins, the quick graphs, just the quick thank yous. It really opened our eyes to like, oh wow, there's a lot of good stuff going on here that we can really use, and it just kind of really was an uplifting moment. I think it really started selling, the positive charge of what we're doing or what we're attempting to do to the organization, and everybody got to see it firsthand. So that was a fun thing to see. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And so I think this is a perfect segue to the next question. And I'll start with Balin, but I would love everyone to answer, which is that, you know, well, just a little aside. My daughter was at a school and they had this program called Caught Being Kind. And I was like, that's it. Like that's the whole idea, right? It's like how do you find opportunities? And Christy, you said it really well, is like catch people doing something good, right? So Madeline, help me understand a moment where like you felt that someone was seen, someone was heard, etc. And it could not have gone better. It was so cool, so special. And why did it work? I would love to just I would love everyone to answer this because I think this is a really great talking point.
Yeah, this one is personal to me, and it's so simple. So that's why I wanted to share it. It is like the simplest thing in the world. So my colleague and I had the privilege of going to our Tokyo office, and getting to do some training with the leadership team there, specifically about recognition, about engagement and leadership, and exactly what we're talking about. The leaders kind of just weren't getting it; they weren't doing it, and there was really low engagement in the entire team. Like the team was struggling. And so we went out and we were going to do this workshop. We're going to work together. And it was a little tough, right? Like we got into some real stuff. We had real conversations. We really challenged these leaders. And after the session, the country manager, who was particularly someone that, was a little challenged by some of the material and had taken time to digest it and think about how he was going to put it into practice. After the session was done, within like half an hour, he went on to our WorkProud system, and left a recognition for Casey and myself. And so it was so simple. He just wrote a little something about how, it was important for him to not just use words, but take action. And so the first action he was going to take after this workshop was thanking us for coming and doing it. And it was so simple, but it was truly from his heart and we could tell. And so it popped up on our little screens as we're typing in the back of the office. And we immediately go over to his desk because he was, in the same office as we were for once. And we like bowed to him and had a little moment. And so it became this thing that was both virtual and in person. But it was such a great example of we already had this structure. We already had this system that he wasn't really using. And it took him 2 minutes to go in and write this thing for us. But it was so thoughtful. And it really made an impact on us. It made meaning. And so it's a basic action that has a lot of meaning. It's not just about talking about it. He was taking action. And he was showing us in that moment that the workshop that we had done had an impact, that it wasn't just us doing words. So it was this very validating moment. But really thinking about the recognition when it's thoughtful and it's meaningful, it doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be something super creative. It can just be from the heart.
I love that. I think I talk a lot about the power of an emoji, and when I was trying to get my leaders bought in, and I'm Gen X, it took me a while to get on board with this recognition stuff. I didn't realize how powerful it was until I started using it on my own team. So I get it. But we did focus groups to see what our frontline engineers wanted most, and one young woman top of her class, somebody that we want to keep in our company, said, if only the VP would just like or give me a heart emoji on the recognition platform, like that would mean so much. And then I walked over to the SVP meeting and said, did you know that that for your frontline engineers, seeing you like a post that their manager gave them recognition for is hugely valuable. And that's not even 2 minutes, Madeline. That's like 2 seconds, right? So connecting people who may be a little bit out of touch with what it's like to be a brand new employee out of school, but someone you really want to keep because PS, they are moving quicker and have much more knowledge and are so much more nimble in what they're giving to the organization. So connecting what they want, as simple as an emoji, in this world of social media and how people have grown up, that was really powerful. And the lights went on for the SVPs at that moment, and they said, "Oh well, this program doesn't really call to me, but my kids would like it." And I said, "Yes." And that's who we're hiring. We're hiring your kids. So it was a really good aha moment for them.
Which is so key too, just people realizing that recognition isn't about what they want to receive. Because I think we all go in, oh, well, this is what I like. So this is what everyone likes. And like just realizing that you're doing it for the other person and it can be a different experience. It seems so simple, but again, it's something that really unlocks for people. I love that. Ryan.
I'm kind of right with you guys. I think nailing it is a huge, span, right? There's no way you can kind of pinpoint what nails it for someone, or my thoughts and your thoughts are completely different. Think about the little person or the one person just having a bad week, hasn't got anything, and all of a sudden they get that little notification that they got an appreciation post, and boom, that week turns around. It's just something, so little can change it. And then to Chrissy's point, like when we have our VPs and everything, they're all on it. They're all kind of scrolling through it every day, and they're clicking and they like it. They make a comment like, "Hey, way to go. That was awesome." Oh man, the whole day completely changes, right? All of a sudden they're walking a little taller and a little faster, and everything's going a lot different. So to say that, to kind of pinpoint a post that really nailed it for me, I can't. We have a whole bunch of them that kind of happen on the daily, and it's so hard to kind of put a finger on one of them. It truly is. So it just works in so many different ways on the daily to kind of go with it, right? Because you never know what's going to nail it for a different person.
And one last thing I'll add too is if you do have a system, something like a WorkProud, one of the best things I recommend every employee does is when they're doing their performance review, go back to your recognitions. There's a page and you can see everything that you've been recognized with. And it's such a great place to grab quotes, to remember all the things you did over the last year that you may have forgotten about. And so sometimes I have a colleague that she'll tell me, like, sometimes when I'm not feeling good, I'll just go in and reread some of my recognitions. And like, what a lovely thing that is just always there for you, that is built from this infrastructure. So like, truly, you don't really realize how much those little comments can add up and really change someone's experience.
Oh my gosh, that is such a cool idea. In fact, like the hamster is running about 1,000,000 miles an hour in my brain right now from just thinking about what we could do with that. That's such a cool. All of this is amazing. Um, there was, forgive me, it was either Christy or Ryan was talking about the frontline workers, and just to kind of clarify, I'd rather maybe I'll just say deskless folks that aren't in front of a computer, folks that are kind of like Ryan. I'm certain that you have a ton of folks in your experience that are kind of that fit that mold fairly well. They're not necessarily in front of their screens a lot. Maybe they're in front of this screen here and there. They might not supposed to be, but maybe they are, right? And so, how, with that experience in mind, and maybe let's start with Ryan on that one. It's like where and one little extra thing I want to add to that is they're probably pretty working pretty hard, right? So they're probably pretty tired, right? And they got a lot going on. So how do you kind of play into what we're talking about here in terms of recognizing these folks and giving them that, but not making it feel like, "Ugh, now I have another thing that I have to do to check that box to say, yes, I'm here." So I'd love kind of Ryan, maybe you start, since I think it was you that mentioned, start talking about that kind of, and then we can filter in. I think this is a really important distinction too about how to navigate that.
Yeah, so frontline employees or deskless, however you want to call them. For us, we are a huge makeup of them. From our police, fire, our maintenance teams, our operations teams. I'd say about 70% of us are, deskless, right? So reaching them is tough sometimes. Some of them they don't see, right away, but having the mobile option was huge for us. It makes it quick and easy, but the way you don't make it feel like it's an obligation or a mandatory thing to jump on there and check it when you get something is to make it authentic, make it true, really actually go about it and pick out an actual fact, actual something you noticed, something they actually did. Don't make it generalized, actually get in there and really see what's going on and really thank them for something that's meaningful and then something, and it helps a little bit more if you know the person and if you're working close with them, I hope you would kind of get to know your colleagues. So you can make it a true and appreciation post about what they're doing and what's going on inside, their job and with their work. I think that's how we kind of defeat the mandatoryism, I guess for lack of a better term, to make it feel like it's pushed on you and you have to do it. This is something you're gonna do or anything like that. We try to keep it authentic as we can with realism.
I just also say, if you are a deskless worker and your foreman or your local leader comes around, that person has positional power, right? So you might feel a little nervous. Oh, there's my boss or there's my big boss. And when that boss or big boss does the catching you doing something good and is either recognize you on a mobile or maybe giving you something in the moment, um, that's a culture changer, right? That's how we do things here. We catch people doing something good. We're not worried when the boss comes around that they're going to say something negative. That can really change the vibe and the feeling and the pride people have in their workplace.
Yeah, and to really add on to that too, I think, looking where you can add rituals, these little moments of synchronicity or things on like, for deskless workers, do you have a sync at the beginning of your shift? Do you have a little team meeting? Is that an opportunity that as a leader, you can recognize someone or have an open, at our all hands for our people team, we have kind of a little ritual. We'll always have a different question, whether it's what was something that you accomplished this quarter you're really proud of, or what was something that someone did for you this quarter that really helped out, or name someone. So you can create, it's not always on you as a leader either, right? Like it's wonderful to hear it from your leader, but you can also create opportunities for your teams to be recognizing each other and stretching their recognition muscles. So it doesn't always have to be on you too. Think of ways that you can just work with your team, ask questions, and make recognition more of a part of day-to-day life, that doesn't feel stressful. What would be a fun way for you to recognize someone, and start there? It doesn't have to be whatever you've seen or even what we're talking about. Do something that works for you and for your team members.
Oh, I love this. So I just realized that we could probably keep talking for another 6 or 7 hours, and maybe we should. Just joking for everybody that has another thing to do. We're going to jump ahead to our final question, and I'm pretty convinced that I'm going to start already planning for how can we do a part two, because this is so good. I love this conversation. Maybe we can get a few more folks to kind of continue to contribute as well, make this panel even bigger. But let's start with, I'll just go in the order of the last person to speak first, which was Ryan. If you had to build a recognition program from scratch tomorrow, right? Two-part question. What's the one thing that you absolutely would do? And what's the one thing you absolutely would avoid like the plague?
Absolutely. One thing I would do is include comments and the gifts from the start. That's something we did not do. We kind of to speak to other people, we had a little bit older regime. They weren't, so they were a little scared of what people might say on comments or, the gifts that were available and kind of, a little hesitant to it. So it is something we kind of held off on. Looking what it did for us, go for it from the gate. There was no hard parts on it. So definitely give the people the ability to quickly, kind of like a post or add a comment without having to go through, actually writing something down and doing something, but being able to tag onto somebody else's. That was a huge part for us. So definitely a do. One thing to avoid at all costs. Um, we haven't really ran into any problems. So that's a tough one for me. And one thing to avoid is not doing it. Not buying in, I shouldn't say buying in, but not having a recognition, program or a way to show appreciation, a standard or whatever you want to call it. It's a huge part. It really is. And then the return on it is just absolutely massive. You're going to see all kinds of your return on any type of investment you may make in this. Just show your employees appreciation and engagement, and you're going to see it start to kind of trickle out into other things, whether that be, ERGs or of special events or whatever, because people are just going to be happier to be here, to be at your organization and be at work, doing those little things. It all adds up in the end and gives you a huge benefit. Hopefully that kind of answers your don't. I don't know.
Oh, it sure does. No, that's wonderful. No, I love that. There are no wrong answers. Fun
All
fact.
right, sounds good.
Christy.
So what I would do, and I think when I've launched programs that has worked really well, is just that stakeholder engagement early on, finding your IT folks, finding your budget folks. People who loved me were the compliance and audit folks because people were giving away gift cards and that's not taxable. Like find your people to help you go on this journey. So that's definitely something I would do and make sure that you're keeping them informed along the way. The thing I wouldn't do is worry so much about my own job in this process. I was really nervous about being this sole person flag carrier for recognition. And it turned out so much better than I could have imagined, not only for the company and the culture and the data and the ROI, but for me personally as a leader, as someone in the company that was a culture changer. And so I think that's what I learned in my first go round was I'm not a cautious person at all. And I was full speed ahead, but I would even be more confident to set up a program, especially hearing from the Madeleines and the Ryans and the Christies. Like it's all upside if you set it up well and if you have the right buy-in and if you do it in a phased approach. Even Ryan said we're sort of doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So you can start small and go from there. So those would be my pieces of advice.
I love that so much. And I will follow up by saying, go for it. This was not, I have another one too, but so at Walk Me, we went hard from the beginning. I was really adamant about going, everybody got 10 points to give to peers. Leaders got 25 points to give to anyone every month. So we started from basically your phase 3, Ryan, and it was so successful. Within a month, we had over 80%. We're sitting at 90%, over 90% usership every month, which is insane. It works really, really well because people are taking ownership. And so that's my big thing is I think having values as the basis to everything and it's values driven behaviors, values driven success, it really builds culture. It helps you have this shared language around what matters to you. I think it's so key. And then within your recognition, you're recognizing the value. So you're saying, oh, you acted with empathy by doing this in this project. And then the thing that I would avoid is silos or letting it be managed entirely by your leadership team, or by just one of us, right? Like I think something that we did really well was make sure that everyone is involved, that we were asking for feedback, taking action on that feedback and communicating it. So everyone really was part of that journey. I think any time that you can really have ownership, it's going to be a key to successful cultural change. If your employees feel part of the journey, they feel ownership of the culture, that they're part of this impact, that it belongs to them. That's why it's WorkProud and not something I made up. We did a whole contest, and someone came up with that name and won. And so it feels like ours. And it's so, so important. And I think it really makes a difference.
Amazing. We are right at the hour, and I want to
Yeah.
respect everybody's time. This has been bonkers great. So thanks everybody. I definitely do want to do a follow-up. If you have questions that weren't answered because of time, do feel free to reach out to us. We will absolutely get those responses to you. So, and we really mean that. We're not like, yeah, I'll call you when we're not like those types of folks. So please do ask the questions if you have them. And I will, even if you're like, I need Madeline to answer this question, just let us know and we'll get the answer. Okay. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you, Charles. You don't see Charles, but he's in the background. He's the reason why this is actually working. So thank you, Charles. Really appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a ridiculously fun day, maybe filled with some belly laughter.
Thank you
Take
all
care,
so
everyone.
much.
Hey guys.